All right, and we are live on YouTube, getting ready to go with the show. Let me get my backup recording going. It's recording. All right, let's get into the show. Here we go. Nope. No, we're not. I forgot to do one thing, so let me do that real quick. Let's go. Let's go with this one. All right, now we're good. Now we're ready to go. Maybe. Things. And the last one. Okay, here we go.
My name is Angus Winchester. I'm the Global Education Director for BCB, and I often describe myself as an alcoholic with a bartending problem. You're listening to the We Like Drinking podcast, the place where you never drink alone.
At the sound of the tone, the official We Like Drinking time will be 5 o'clock. Commence consumption.
This week on episode 263 of the We Like Drinking podcast, we'll be discussing eminent domain in California, and we're chatting all things gin with Whitley Neill founder and creator Johnny Neill. So crack open your beers, uncork that wine, and let's get drinking. Oh my goodness, listeners. I don't know if we're starting to really enjoy this Sunday recording thing or what, but 2 weeks in a row we're recording on a Sunday, and every week we get earlier and earlier. It's not even noon yet, and we're drinking gin.
Well, we had to get it in before the San Francisco 49ers dominate the Green Bay Cheeseheads. You know what is the crazy part about the Packers and their whole cheese identity? It's not even close to as good as the cheese from California. Suck it, Green Bay.
Fighting words to start off as he feeds his baby son.
Aaron Rodgers is a jerk. Go talk to your family, Aaron Rodgers. Go talk.
I don't understand the whole cheesehead thing anyway. The Green Bay Packers are named for the Green Bay Packing Company. They should just put boxes over their heads.
Yeah, if you're a Green Bay fan, you'll be putting a box over your head by the end.
Oh. Fighting words on a drinking podcast. Let me say cheers, my podcast drinking friends, and welcome to Happy Hour 263 of your favorite award-winning topical beer and wine, and let's face it, spirits education podcast, focusing on fun, which I think we're going to do a lot of today. And if by now you have to have realized that you're just listening to podcast gold, so be sure to get yourself subscribed to the show by visiting welikedrinking.com/subscribe. John, you look like you're ready to say something already.
No, I was just I can't wait to see how my time infused into my blood orange Paloma.
So tonight, let's get right to it. We're joined by our usual panel members. We have our California Sustainable Wine Growing Ambassador and recovering wine blogger, Jeff Solomon.
Yeah, this is podcast Red and Gold this week. Red and Gold.
Our commercial brewer and snake wrangler, John Ruyak.
Yeah, I did wrangle a dead snake in the arroyo this morning walking the dogs.
Nice. And I am your host and certified specialist of wine, Jeff Eccles. Now, our guest this week is the creator and founder of Whitley Neill Gin, traditional English gin with flavors from all over the world. He is an 8th-generation distiller who found his ginspiration from this project in South Africa. Please help us welcome Johnny Neill. Welcome to the show, Johnny.
Woo! Yeah.
Hi, guys. It's great to be with you. It's 6 o'clock somewhere in the world, so here's a gin tea for you.
Absolutely. Johnny is joining us from his native London. He's got, I see a ton of awards back behind you. I'm assuming those are all for gin. So
mostly gin, a little bit of whiskey too. So we've got some Irish whiskey going on too. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here. Let's find out. I want to walk through everybody what we've got here. So we've all got some gin samples that were sent to us by Johnny.
Yeah.
So we've got his Whitley Neill handcrafted dry gin. So this is the
original,
right? We have, and then they just get fun. We
I've got
have,
a bigger one.
oh, look at that one. That one's,
There you go.
I like
It's
that
bigger.
one. Wait. We have the purple bottle, which is the rhubarb and ginger gin. Rhubarb and ginger.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll be talking about these a lot. We have the white bottle, the blood orange gin, and we have the yellow bottle, the quince gin. So a lot of different flavors, and this doesn't even begin to get into all the flavors that you have as well, right?
Right. Yeah. No, we've got a raft. We've got about 11 different flavors altogether at the moment. So, and then limited editions on the way too. We're just launching a new limited edition in the UK.
Oh my goodness, that's so fantastic. So let's see what everybody has made today. Is anybody drinking it straight up? I just got to ask.
No.
So I do have the dry gin in front of me. I served it neat to begin with, just to get into the quintessential botanical nature of Whitley Neill, and then I did pour the rest of the dry gin in with some Pink Lady apple kombucha. So. And I was debating. I was thinking about doing the ginger rhubarb in here because I always love like some ginger kick in my kombucha. But I think this is. I want to stay kind of true to form here. We're gonna get kind of funky, but I want to try the originator also.
Nice, Johnny. What are you drinking?
Yeah, I'm on the original too. You know, this is my first baby, so it's my go-to on a Sunday evening.
Is that with tonic or is that just over ice?
Yeah, just with tonic. I mean, you can sip it neat. You can have a dry martini. It's Sunday. I've got to go to work tomorrow, so I thought I'd just have a nice long drink tonight. We've got distilling to do tomorrow, so
excellent.
I behave myself.
John.
When we first got the bottles a little while back, I poured myself a gin and tonic with that, the dry gin, and it was hands down the best gin and tonic I've ever tasted in my life. But today I took the blood orange and I made a blood orange Paloma. And that was grapefruit juice, a squeezed lime, the gin, and then over ice, of course, and then a garnish of orange and a sprig of thyme.
Nice. Sounds delicious.
That does sound delicious. And I couldn't help myself when I saw the recipe for the Whitley Neill and juice. So I went with the standard. This is equal parts of the gin, grapefruit juice, and orange juice. And it's so delicious because all three components come in so vibrantly. You get the sweet of the orange juice, you get the pucker of the grapefruit juice, and then you just get the herbal quality of the gin that just shines through at the end with a little bit of that gin punch. So
the punch,
yeah, man, it is
a little bit of coriander, a little bit of extra coriander in the gin as well. So just that herbal and citrus note in the gin, delicious.
So good, so good. And my mind is on my money, and my money is on my mind. If anybody was curious,
laid back. and I know Stubb is listening right now. It's 6 a.m. 6 a.m.
6 o'clock now.
All right, so that's what we're drinking. I really want to get to the interview portion of the show, but we've got to take care of a little bit of fun first with a bit that we like to call wine, beer, or pop culture reference. This is where I'm going to give the panel a term, and they're going to try to tell me if it's a wine term, a beer term, or some kind of pop culture reference. The term this week is fixative. So is fixative a wine term, a beer term, or a pop culture reference? Jeff Solomon, I'm going to go ahead and start with you this week.
Fixative. You know, I can't help but think back to that Dogfish Head beer that doubles as fix for developing film. And I also I think back to It must have been within the first 20 episodes. We used to do like movie quotes on the show. And I remember like Jeff Eccles probably repeated himself like 3 or 4 times during those first 20 episodes. He just kept going back to the same quotes. And I wonder if this is Eccles just having a little like brain fart, a little bit of a hiccup. Fixative is actually the name of the Dogfish Head beer that is used to develop film. It's a beer term.
Okay. John Ruyak.
I'm going, it's a wine term. I think it's the glue on the back of a wine label.
Okay. I like it. 2 great answers. Johnny Neill, what do you think a fixative is?
I don't know. I mean, I think can I go both 2 ways? Can I go beer and wine?
You can do that.
I'm guessing it's something to do with holding flavors or some sort of agent it's something sugary, something glycerin-y, something that balances the flavors together. I don't know.
Holds the flavors together in a drink kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, in beer and wine.
In beer and wine, or something else, right?
Or something else, yeah.
Or something else, yeah. Okay, I didn't know really where to go with what this one was, so I just punted to a pop culture reference. But I'm just going to give all the points to Johnny here because a fixative, let me give you the definition of a fixative. While flavors like citrus may stand out when tasting a gin, the most important botanicals are called fixatives, which structurally bind the flavors of the gin together and create the spirit's distinctive body and character. Examples include, Jeff Solomon, grains of paradise, cubeb pepper, orris root, and angelica root. So I'm giving all the points to Johnny for that one because he nailed it for the most part. And the term again was fixative.
So is it now beer, wine, spirits, and pop culture reference?
I think that's what we're going to have to do, but I didn't make that announcement before it.
It almost comes across as like, you know how you need an emulsifier when you're cooking and you're trying to bind like water and oil together. Like, you know, like I like to put a little mustard into my salad dressings to kind of hold everything together. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. And it's so interesting because as you're talking about that, I took my first sip of just this straight, neat, dry gin, and the mouthfeel was just so beautiful. Like it's so, it's got like this petrol type of viscosity to it, and those citrus notes are just popping, like citrus and peppery notes, and a little bit of like a cooling action on the end. Like this is beautiful. I've had the privilege of having gin like 2 weeks in a row on this podcast and sipping them neat always to start. And my goodness, this is not just neat. This is keen. This is A-OK. It's fantastic.
That's great to hear. That's really great to hear.
I noticed that through all of them, that viscosity and that weight through all the gin, all 4 of these gins that I tasted. It's got that kind of weightiness to it, and that lets you know it's there kind of thing. They're just delicious.
All I know is, you know, I'm not a gin drinker. I brew beer, and so it's beer and wine mostly for me. But I love a gin and tonic, and when I poured that gin and tonic and just the aromas that came out of that was just like, you know, when you get free booze in the mail, you gotta try it out. And that's what I went to first, and it was just beautiful. I mean, noticing the different aromas that come through these spirits that I've just never paid attention to before. It was really, really neat. It was cool. It was all those good things.
Thanks, guys. No, thanks. I mean, you know, all the gins have the original gin underneath them, so those underlying botanicals. So we've got 9 botanicals in the original gin, and that's the form that holds it. Also, the alcohol plays an important part. So all of these are sitting at 86 proof as well. So it gives that flavor delivery that you're hoping and that mouthfeel.
Awesome. And, you know, before we get into it, you know, we may not have a whole lot of, you know, knowledgeable gin drinkers listening who, when they hear the name Johnny Neill, may not automatically know who you are. So you quite literally may have gin pumping through your veins. So can you tell our listeners a little bit of your family history and with gin?
Sure. Well, I'm topping up the blood levels today, but it's a weird thing to say. I mean, it's a weird thing to say, but I literally grew up on gin, so I wouldn't say I started drinking too early, but certainly gin was always around the house at home, and that's because my grandmother's family had been distilling since 1762. So my father was a director of a company called Whitley, which is based in Warrington between Liverpool and Manchester, and Liverpool are playing at the moment. So pray that they're going to beat Man United today and take the title, because I've been waiting for 30 years for the title. So my dad was director there of the distillery and the brewery. His uncle was chairman for 20 years in the 40s to 60s. My great grandfather was a guy called John James Whitley, who was the managing director for about 40 years. And then it goes back to Isabella Greenall, 5 generations back. That's where the Whitleys and the Greenalls intermarried. And then I'm descended from Thomas Greenall, who started the business in 1762. Actually, it's a brewing company. So I've got that side of my family, which is gin. And then actually on the other side, my grandfather's side, are Irish whiskey distillers. So we have a heritage dating back to 1730 on another 8 generations on the other side making whiskey. So lots of alcohol in the blood.
How was that growing up? Was it, I imagine gin wasn't gin or any kind of alcohol really wasn't anything special to you because it was just there all the time. And so it never really, I don't want to say it wasn't special, but it wasn't like hidden or something like that.
No, I mean, it was, it's a traditional English product, and the gin that we've grown up on, it was the same recipe that has been since 1760s. So, gin's moved on dramatically in the last 10 years, last 15 years, actually call it last 20 years. But no, I mean, it was always around the house. I always had to make 2 martinis a night for my dad. He always had 2 martinis a night. So it was, I love gin. I always loved the nose of it. I loved the bitterness of the juniper. But actually I was never involved with the family company. So dad left in the 70s. So I never really had any involvement in that. So it was always something I wanted to do, was create my own recipe and develop my own brand. So that's where Whitley Neill started. Okay.
And and you released it 15 years.
2005. Yeah. So I started. I was working in finance, going blind, staring at spreadsheets. I thought there was a better way of going blind, so I thought distilling was the way forward. So it took me probably 2 years to develop my first recipe, and at that stage, at that time, it was very difficult to get your own license for distilling with a pot still that was under 1,000 liters. So I had to go and visit distilleries around the country to see who would help me experiment with botanicals.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
And was there something, or was it you just wanted to get into gin, or did you see something in the tea leaves? Because like you were saying, 15 years ago, gin wasn't really, there was a handful of top end gins, but it really wasn't kind of the craft thing that we've seen evolve over the last 10 years. Did you see something that made you think that something big was coming, or did it just happen to be that you just wanted to get into gin and you just happened to hit the wave?
Yeah, I wish I could say I had a globe out there, but no, it was just I've always been passionate about gin, and I'd always wanted to create my own gin, and it was just the time that I did it seemed to be the right time. And actually, I think I was early, maybe a little bit too early. So you had Hendrix and Martin Miller's and Wright Gin launching about 1999, and I came in 6 years after that. So that, I'm sort of an early adopter. it's by luck that this wave, it's a cyclical thing. I think tastes have changed, and then gin's evolved. You can see what you're tasting today. We've got a whole new raft of different flavors, which are infusions as well as distillates that have only really got going in the last 5 years. So that's the fun's come in the last 8 years, really, for the category, certainly in the UK.
Excellent. Jeff Solomon.
Yeah, I'm hearing you talk about, gin kind of running in the family and kind of growing up around it. I would imagine, as opposed to the United States, where it's like adults pretend when they talk to children that alcohol doesn't exist, that it's probably a lot more of a percentage of folks in your neck of the woods that kind of knew they wanted to get into something like this as a career more early on. I guess I was wondering is what really came first, like your love or your wanting to start a distillery, or the influence of South Africa, which I'm seeing quite a bit on these labels?
Yeah, a bit of both. I got married just over 20 years ago. My wife Nikki is from Durban in South Africa. So I'd been going out to South Africa for 6 years before I started playing with these different botanicals. So they sort of went hand in hand. The timing was ideal. But actually, originally I'd started looking at using British botanicals. It was quite flaccid. It was quite boring. I was looking at floral British botanicals like hyacinth and elderflower, rose, and fully distilling those. And some of those flavors were getting lost behind some of the other flavors within the gin, so being dominated by some of the other botanicals. So that's when I started to step away and look at the African content, and I didn't know what I'd find. I managed to smuggle about 25 different botanicals in my suitcase out of South Africa, and we tried everything. So and this was just distilling them individually in a mini still. So I tried the Protea flower, which is the national flower of South Africa, and actually we now have a flavored gin which has got Protea and hibiscus, but actually as a distillate we were using the seeds that were very neutral. There was no flavor or aroma. We tried rooibos tea. I don't know, do you guys know rooibos or red bush tea? It's native to the Western Cape in South Africa. It's fully organic. There's no caffeine in it. It's really good for you. You should try it when you next go to Whole Foods or something. But it's also very powerful. So when we used a small amount of that, it was actually taking over the recipe completely. So
wow. And
then it was a journey of different. We tried Hoodia, which is a cactus. I tried Buku, which is quite a bitter root that sits in the ground, but it was too bitter. And to be honest, it was all getting a bit drug related. And we've got enough white powders sitting in the gin already. So I thought I'd go down a different route. And then I stumbled across this tree, amazing tree called the baobab tree or baobab tree, the tree of life. And initially I spotted it. It didn't have any leaves on it, but they are enormous. They're iconic trees. Some of them grow to 3,000 years old. A bit like the sequoia is for North America. This is Africa's icon. So I found that it produced a fruit. So and I brought my props today. So I've got a baobab fruit there.
Yeah,
yeah, which I can make some music with. So these have little strings and they're attached to the tree, and inside is what we use in the gin. So I found out that it was a white citrus pulp that in rural areas animals will crack open the fruit and just eat the little seeds with the citrus pulp surrounding it, and humans will actually use the pulp a bit like cream of tartar in soups and stews as a thickening agent, but also they made a lemonade drink out of it. So they steep it in milk or water for 3 or 4 hours, give it a stir, and then it's a healthy, refreshing citrus drink. Oh, wow. So yeah, and then we distilled it, and it was sort of slightly on the lemon spectrum. It's a little bit tart. It's a bit like a lemon sherbet. and really tasty and really different to the traditional citrus peel that we were already distilling. So it worked around that citrus element on the tree. In the gin. And then the other botanical was easy. To be honest, it was we call them Cape gooseberries over here because they grow around Cape Town. The botanical name is physalis, not syphilis, physalis. I've only had one gin, so physalis peruviana. It's originally from Peru, and they're little orange tart berries. Bittersweet berries, beautiful fruit. So you guys you'll have seen them and had them on as garnishes on desserts or on cocktails. They're beautiful, dipped in chocolate or icing sugar. So again, there was a bittersweet flavor and aroma that we got through distillation, but it's subtle, not overpowering, not dominant, just subtle, playing on that citrus spectrum. And then the gin itself is fully distilled. I'd call it a more mellow London Dry. It's not. I mean, it's juniper led, but it's the juniper sits a little further back. There's a bit more coriander in the recipe, which helps push the citrus through. Coriander's got those citrus notes as well as that herbal piece and that pepper you were seeing earlier. So that helps push all that citrus out, which it just worked really well.
So I envision a young Johnny Neill searching the world for just only the finest botanicals to make this new gin. I grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California, which are a little bit weird. And I went to school for biology, and I recall like a microbiologist really warning against trying to forage for your own mushrooms, even though people do it all the time. I'm wondering, were there ever any sort of like incidents where like a botanical was misdiagnosed, or you just decided to go for it and say like, let's try this and see what happens, and you weren't so happy with the result?
No, well, there's actually you've got the quince gin in front of you there. That's we're not distilling the quince here because the stones, quince pips and stones, when you distill that, it gives off hydrogen cyanide gas. So that's not good for the distillery.
Yeah.
No. But fortunately, we knew what was coming. So we decided rather than actually distill the quince, we'd actually use the real fruit. So we use fermented juice for that, and that's an infusion rather than a distillation. Otherwise, we could have killed a lot of people. Yeah.
Good call there.
Yeah.
The quince is safe to drink. That's what I'm saying. It's safe to drink.
And as we walk through these, John, I know you're next, but I just gotta say, like, the aromas on all of these are so unique and so amazing. Like the rhubarb and ginger, the aroma on that one is so special. Like it's there's this bit of this sweetness to the aroma, and it's just remarkable. I'm saying because you just mentioned the quince again, and the aroma on that one too. They're just amazing. So.
And I think that the alcohol helps bring those through. Yeah. So you've got that. Rather than sitting as a gin liqueur at 20% or 40 proof, they're sitting at 86 proof. Now, what I would say on these gins is we term them as distilled gins. The other flavors. So we're infusing things after distillation, post distillation on these, and we are adding a little bit of sugar on top. So some of that mouthfeel, some of that sweetness is from the sugar. And the one that has the most sugar is the quince, and that's because there's sugar within the quince juice itself, as well as the sugar. So it does feel more like a liqueur, but it's full-bodied, and the mouth feels really good. And then the rhubarb and ginger, rhubarb and ginger is our biggest selling. It's bigger than the black bottle now. So
is it really?
It's huge in the UK now. So it was number 9 on Amazon in the UK as best-selling products at Christmas this year. And it's just, I think it's because of the balance, because you've got the balance of the sweet and tartness of the rhubarb and then that spice from the ginger. People have just, rhubarb's on trend in the UK and Europe at the moment. People have just clicked onto it and just loving it and playing with it rather than just sticking it in a gin and tonic. Some are using soda because they don't they don't love all that sweetness. They are a little bit different to traditional gins. They've got that
Absolutely. And that's one that is really just by itself. It's just, you can just sit there and just play with it. Enjoy it, and just the depth of it. And, you can tell there's a little bit of sugar added to it because it just sticks to your lips and it just kind of hangs out there for a while. Yeah. John.
Yeah. So quick, first to Solomon, next time you make salad dressing, don't use mustard as an emulsifier. Use baobab fruit.
Baobab fruit would be fantastic.
There you go.
Certainly. Or some orris root.
There you go. But Johnny, 2 questions, I guess. How many runs did it take you to get your recipe down for the original dry gin? And how difficult was it to scale up that recipe when you opened your own distillery?
Yeah, no. It took 18 months. Jeff. So it was a lot. I mean, we had a rotabap, so it was easier. When you're doing the smaller batches, it takes a couple of hours to actually do it. But just proportionally, I couldn't count how many batches. We've probably 100, something like that. Where plus the ones where we were distilling individual botanicals as well, just to get the balance right.
Are you testing your botanicals for certain levels of things before you do it and making adjustments? Because for brewers, crop years change for hops every year. There's different growing conditions. So do those things apply to the botanicals that go into gin as well?
They do. I mean, the quality is absolutely paramount, and then the quality of the spirit. But the most important one is the juniper. So we're testing the juniper oil whenever it goes. But we now have had a relationship with our suppliers for over 20 years. So they're good suppliers. We generally get crop from the same people, and they, like you say, the harvests are different. So we have had juniper sometimes. Generally, we get it from Macedonia. If not Italy, or sometimes we've had to go to India, where the berries are much larger, but the essential oil from that larger berry is exactly the same as the Macedonian. So it's generally the coriander and the juniper, which they're about 90% of the recipe actually. Those are the two that are most important to us.
Cool, interesting.
And we touched on it before. We've got the 4 flavors that we're tasting here, and that's not your 11. I think I looked. I saw you've got raspberry, pink grapefruit, blackberry, aloe and cucumber, Parma violet. I mean, you've got all these flavors that you're playing with and releasing. So is there one that you're most excited about, like just recently, or are there any upcoming releases that you've got that we should be looking for?
Yeah, well, in the States, you've only got the 4 there in front of you. I like the blood orange that you're drinking. I think it's got although you got that sweetness of Sicilian orange, and that you've got the depth of the blood orange too. I think that'll be fun to play with. And actually, it comes in the mini that you've got is a white bottle. Actually, the big bottle is orange. So
okay.
It makes sense. It doesn't make sense that it was in a white bottle. We made a mistake on the packaging, but it's all changed now. We are releasing this month in the UK a gooseberry, not a Cape gooseberry, a gooseberry gin. So there's a move towards sour drinks here as well. So the gooseberry's got that sourness. So I think people are going to have a bit of fun with that. That releases this month. So just this next couple of weeks, it's going to get out there in the UK, and then we'll different flavors work in different ways in different markets. So we're still trying to figure out which ones will work in different markets. In Europe, in Germany, the original gin, they have a slightly more bitter palate, especially in the north of Germany. So they like things fully distilled. They like their own eau de vie and herbal liqueurs. So the original is quite strong in Northern Europe, but the rhubarb and ginger is the one that's really hitting off. Things like raspberry work really well in Australia. So for some reason they like raspberry. So it's just kind of figuring it out. And I don't know which way you guys will go. So we've only just really come into the market with these gins, but the flavored gin market, as it's called, is I think, and gin as a category overall in the States has got an exciting 5 to 10 years ahead of it. So I'm really excited about the US.
So as as we're talking about all these flavors, I'm salivating, right? We talk a lot as, primarily a beer and wine podcast here. We talk a lot about food pairings. And I was wondering, because at least my experience has always been cocktails are treated as before or after you eat. Can we make a case that gin could be like the perfect, most food-friendly spirit around? And if so, what's your magical pairing?
Yeah, well, definitely. I mean, it's all about flavors and aromas. So it is. I mean, it's like a food, isn't it? Food in a glass. Yeah, I mean, the original, using those traditional recipes works really well with fish, game foods, deer or venison or stuff like that. Rhubarb and ginger works nicely with curry, actually. So if you go for a curry, an Indian, it's really nice. And with ginger ale, have it with ginger ale. It's got that little bit of spice element to it, and the mouth feels great when you're having a slightly hot dish. Quince, perfect for your cheese board. Just sit the quince neat over ice, cheese board, because that's where it comes from. My grandfather was in the army, and he was in Palestine and Turkey in the 1930s, 1940s. And we used to go to his house at Christmas. There used to be a big cheese board with quince jelly and quince jam, and we were actually using Turkish quince juice in our gin. So I love that, just sipping it neat over ice and then just tasting cheeses. I mean, it's the world's your oyster with flavors. I think there's so much. We should do more food pairing. Absolutely.
I think this Paloma is like the quintessential brunch cocktail. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, some omelets and maybe a side of a couple of thick strips of bacon with the acidity of this drink, and just man.
And then have a red snapper. Like you should be all on the red snappers this morning. Big night last night, and just refreshing yourselves this morning. So a nice Bloody Mary with gin.
Oh, there you go.
Oh wow. I could definitely. I want like a bagel with lox and capers right now. I would love to have some sushi in front of me right now, like with that rhubarb ginger. It just something tells me that's going to be a killer right there.
All right, guys. Any last questions for Johnny before we move on?
I mean, just kind of off the cuff thing. The gooseberry, you're getting those from Canada or Alaska, or was that from the Scandinavian countries?
British gooseberries. We're using British gooseberries.
Okay.
The Cape gooseberries in the original recipe are South African, but the gooseberry we're using English gooseberries. Yeah.
Okay.
It depends. It depends on how big the product becomes, and then we'll have to look for other sources. For the botanicals. But at the moment, we're trying to keep everything sustainable.
Nice.
Jeff, anything else?
Thank you. This is fantastic. This is the perfect way to start the day. I'm gonna carry this good luck into the 49ers domination of the Packers later. And for every touchdown, I'll be opening another one of these bottles. So
I'll drink with you.
Very good.
The 49ers, yeah.
Awesome, Johnny. Thank you so much for joining us. I know if you have to go, we're
no, I'll hang around. I'm fascinated by what you're doing.
Well, thank you for joining us and letting us sample on these drinks and letting us kick our days off right. Honestly,
Thank you so much for having me, guys. So I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll hook up in the States. I'm going to get over this year, and I'll definitely try and visit.
Excellent. Oh, that sounds awesome. All right, so let's get into the rest of the show and move into booze news. We discuss interesting, noteworthy, or sometimes some pretty silly things. Not today, though. Oh my goodness, coming out of California, PG&E just can't stay out of the headlines. It seems Pacific Gas and Electric was tentatively granted eminent domain over a portion of a Calistoga vineyard owner's land. So this is coming in place to install a natural gas plant to address, quote, rapidly growing customer demand. So Terry Gard is the owner of the land, and he has 63 acres of vineyard property. And PG&E is looking to capture 1.4 acres of land from him in this move. They did offer him $335,000 for the land, which he refused, citing that he felt it was undervalued. They did have assessors come in and say that was what it was worth. This is along a highway. So there's a couple other things that go along to this. PG&E is required to fulfill state requirements, and those state requirements are 3 sizable resort developments that are going in that they're needing to bump up their production or increase supply for these 3 resorts that are coming under development. A little bit more context, though. In order to comply with federal and state regulations, PG&E has to perform what are quoted integrity assessments and investments in upgrading and modernizing their pipeline. Now, they did say that if they went another route, if they didn't use Mr. Gard's property, they would have to go to multiple properties and it would add years to the process. Eminent domain is a thing, and I wanted to get your guys' take on this, that a judge has temporarily given them the ability to just proceed. So, John, I know you've got some thoughts on this, so I'm going to start with you.
So, eminent domain is spelled out in both the 5th and 14th Amendments to the Constitution of the United States, where, yes, property rights are paramount within the United States, but the government can take control of a piece of property with proper compensation and other due process. In this instance, eminent domain laws changed a little bit over the last half century, and they're allowing government takeover of properties to be transferred to private concerns for economic development. In this case, a utility is kind of semi-private, semi-government. It's government controlled. Usually these utilities started out as private entities, but then came under strict government control for rate setting and all this thing. So it's really kind of strange. What bothers me so much about this one in particular, as opposed to other cases of eminent domain, which have been famous in the last 20 years, Kelo versus New London, the Berman ruling back in the 50s regarding urban blight and that kind of stuff. But the fact that they're touting this issue with these resorts. So the fact that they have to build this, and it's a little bit unclear as to why they need to do an LNG, a liquid natural gas thing. Are they producing liquid natural gas, or is this a liquid natural gas knockdown facility where they're importing liquid natural gas and safely turning it into gaseous product for the use down the pipeline? Regardless, it seems dumb. And the other, it's just a poor use of energy if they're bringing in natural gas and refrigerating it to make it a liquid to send it down the line for a resort. Couldn't the energy be used better in that regard? And doesn't California have certain laws regarding new development where it has to be used? They have to be using sustainable practices like solar and things of that nature. And I'll throw another thing out for discussion. Okay, so they're proposing that they give this guy $300,000 for this acre of property, but he's also losing the production on that property, right? So, I mean, even if he's moderately successful with his grape production there, that's 120 cases an acre, right? That's a lot of money for a small winery. 120 cases, that might be $20,000 in lost revenue ad infinitum, right? So, eminent domain had its purpose way back in the day when there was this huge land grab in the United States and people just went out and bought stuff. But then they figured out, well, the government needs to do stuff. Transmission lines, schools, police stations, roads, even railroads and things of that nature. But is eminent domain really necessary at this point in time? It seems like something from the distant past that should just be done away with. It's what's the word? It's
archaic.
Yes, yeah. Archaic. Thank you.
I'll tell you what.
I yield the floor to Solomon.
As a landowner in the great state of California, let me tell you something. I sit on a 7,000 square foot lot, and if there were no house here, that lot would still be appraised well north of $300,000. So let's get that square. One of the main reasons why, and you're talking about Calistoga, which is in the northern end of the Napa Valley, one of the reasons why Napa Valley fruit costs so much is because it's kind of like this history and this pedigree of good wine. The fruit drove up the prices of the land there. There's no way you could get an acre and a half of Napa Valley real estate for $300,000. The other thing that is just so weird to me is like, there is a way that PG&E would have made that happen without this whole eminent domain situation. And it involves PG&E. It involves however many resorts are saying that they need this right there. They all chip in together. You know what solves everything? The word 1,000 is not what solves it. You need more commas. You need more zeros. Just say 10 million and watch this not even be a story. And it would have been a drop in the bucket for everybody. And now you're starting to deal with constitutional law. And dare I say, as a Californian who grew up in the Santa Cruz Mountains, who is honoring this rich history that existed before the United States existed, it's like this whole idea of like owning the earth and a chunk of the earth is just such garbage to begin with. And I have to throw that out there. But that being said, somebody else wrote down on a piece of paper and they put a bunch of money to say that this area is my area now. $300,000 is not even close to enough compensation. So you pay that owner what is just due, and all that shit goes away. But fuck you, PG&E. You're all about skeet skirting around everything. None of us forgot that 15 years ago, your faulty pipelines caused an explosion in the middle of the city of San Bruno. Fuck you guys. Fuck you. By the way, my bill is always paid on time, so leave me alone.
Just real quick. I don't know. I know other people want to say things about this, but it's almost Sonoma County. Is that where it is? It's
Napa.
Okay, it's almost eminent domain ex post facto, right? Because they approved these resorts, right? And they knew there was going to be an issue, right? They approved these resorts because it's really tough to get all the taxes. It's tough to get taxes out of agricultural land. I mean, it's usually grandfathered relative to the value of the land, so they're not bringing in the revenue they want based on the value of the land because they can't. So they've got this new development and they want to, reap all the rewards of room night taxes. But now it's working its way back to causing pain for other people.
Yeah, and this all goes. I mean, this goes so much deeper because the Calistoga. I don't know if it was city council or who does it, but they redid the land from from private to commercial for where those properties, those resorts are going in. Like at the time they were doing all that, that is the time where they should have, because if it was so hard to get this plant anywhere else, they knew a long time ago what they needed to do. And if they would have approached them before the resort and everything else came up and said, hey, we want to buy this little 1.5 acres of your thing that's like right next to a highway, and I don't even know if it's actually used for great production at this point, but if they would have approached them a long time ago with that monetary amount, they probably could have got it. But it's unfortunate when honestly these corporations or whatever is building this resort to this kind of tactics to basically just take somebody's property from them with a compensation, as Jeff said, that seems not quite right.
It's a shade under market value.
Yeah. Johnny, how would this go over across the pond? How would this happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's only large infrastructure projects like HS2 we've got at the moment where we have compulsory purchase. It's kind of similar, it'll go the same way, I think. But the market value would probably be correct.
Yeah, you think, okay.
Yeah.
So the corporations or the government in general, you think plays a little bit more fair when it comes to
a little bit fair on valuation, absolutely.
And as it should be. So guys, any other thoughts on this?
I will say one other thing. Every year, the county assessor sends you, what they think the value of your property is worth, and your real estate tax is based off of that. I will put a little bit in the hand of the property owner, because no property owner ever looks at that assessment and says, you're not charging me enough.
Right.
So I think that's something that happens too. Hey, I gotta take off for a second. I'll be right back.
That is true. You get that assessor notice. I'm like, there's no way my lot's worth that much, until they want to build a railroad through my yard, right?
Right.
It's worth twice that.
Or we all have a little bit of a capitalistic base. All right, awesome. Okay, let's move on. I know it's pushing noon for me, but even so, it's still, we have to call it. It's
last call. Time to
clean house and lock the doors. You know what we do here, folks? We're looking for a little bit of help from you. Jeff Solomon, if folks want to follow us on the social media, how can they do so?
Hey, be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. On Instagram, we're just We Like Drinking. I shouldn't say just We Like Drinking, because that presupposes that it's not important. We're very important. We are We Like Drinking. You better check us out. On Twitter, we are We Like Drinking 1. That's the numeral 1. And that 1 is just there because there's some jerk squatting on the real deal. The place that we really like to get in touch with everybody, all of our friends, all of our loved ones, is in our private Facebook group, which is known as The Tavern. So while you're on Facebook, getting in fights with acquaintances, make sure to search for We Like Drinking The Tavern, ask to join that group. Or if that's too difficult for you, you can always go to welikedrinking.com/tavern to get in with this goodness.
Johnny, one last time, where are the best places for our listeners to find you and Whitley Neill on the social media channels?
On Instagram, it is Whitley Neill Gin. On Facebook, it's Whitley Neill. I've got a personal account, which is Neil Johnny on Instagram, and I'm just Johnny Neill on Facebook. So
excellent.
Easy.
You can also, John Ruyak, if folks have some thoughts on the show or eminent domain, where can they go to leave some comments and reviews of the show?
Hey, look us up. We're on Apple Podcast, and leave us a 5-star review. Let us know what you think. And if you like this episode, take your friend's phone and subscribe to the show on their phone, and yours, and your mom's, and your uncle's, coworkers, people you're waiting in line at the grocery store.
Do make sure you give them their phone back, though. please.
Yes.
You can, and also if you've done all that and you're looking to help us a little bit more, you can always consider becoming a patron of the show. This is where you give us a little bit of money so we can fight any eminent domain battles we have with our houses in Gilroy, California. You can find out more by visiting welikedrinking.com/pledge. To find out how you can become a patron of the show. You can also find the show notes for this episode with all links to the stories or mentions we have at welikedrinking.com/episodes. All right, that was a lot. That was some great information that I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you will find yourself some Whitley Neill Gin ASAP. But it's a time of the show where I get to say, okay, panel, let's take one last trip around this table and get some final thoughts before we shut off the lights. John Ruyak.
You know, if you were watching us live on YouTube, you would get to see me with a sprig of thyme in my mouth to make sure I got every last drop of this Whitley Neill Blood Orange Gin.
Smart man. Jeff Sullivan.
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is a jerk, but Devontae Adams is cool.
Okay. Johnny, any final thoughts before we let you get out of here?
Guys, get down to the liquor store, get yourself some gin, and just chill out this afternoon, and then watch some football.
Either football or football, either one, right?
Both footballs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're down with Mank, you're a wank. That's what I say.
I'm with you, Jeff. I'm with you.
And Johnny, let me just say, thank you so much for taking time out of your Sunday to join us. I know that this took a long time to put together, but I'm so happy we did. I'm so happy we got to experience your gin. You are making a fantastic product here, and it's great to see people really putting such much passion and love into creating a fantastic project. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jeff, and John. And I'm sorry you guys are up so early. So just enjoy the rest of your day. And I'm going to have another gin and I'm off to bed. So.
Hey, by the way, just because it's on my mind, can we take a moment to acknowledge how symmetric this episode is? 2 Jeffs, 2 Johns. It's the perfect balance, like some Whitley Neill dry gin.
Oh, look at that product placement. Oh, my goodness.
Beautiful.
And with that, I'll say thanks again for joining us at the We Like Drinking podcast, where you'll never drink alone.
Go Niners!
Johnny picked up on it. We didn't even tell him we were going to punch the camera. All right, let me just get off of the YouTube. YouTube viewers, thank you so much for joining us. It is always fantastic to have you here.
Live streaming has stopped.
Hey, Johnny, thank you so